I had a boss once who spent all morning locked in his office. He asked me to come in after lunch, where he showed me a handmade graph. He then proceeded to explain that this was a chart of all the sex he had ever had in his life. See, here it is blank until I joined the army. Then I went to a hooker here. Then they sent me to Vietnam, where hookers only charged $2 per time. That's where you see the big jump. I was on 2 tours but then got shot in the face. I came back home and you see how it just drops to almost nothing. I was astounded. He wanted a pomegranate for lunch, and they were out of season, but that didn't stop him from sending me on a quest to every grocery store in town in search of a pomegranate. Multiple produce guys laughed at me, but that was the easiest $13 per hour I've ever made. My boss is certainly Michael Scott-esque. When I first started, I was essentially Pam as well, since I was both receptionist and his assistant to some extent. My favorite story was back when we were prepping for a conference. Some context: he's terrible with the English language in general, and will mangle phrases and descriptions to no end, how the turntables. So on a group call he kept talking about wanting a golden hamster ball to do giveaways with. Was raving about how great it would be spinning around while people walked by, all the while everyone on the call was just sitting in confused silence. However, by that point, I had become so good at decoding his nonsense that I knew he was referring to a gold raffle cage, and sent him image privately asking if it's what he was thinking. To this day he still talks about the fact I can read his mind and must be psychic. And he still refers to it as a hamster ball. All in all, he's a pretty nice guy and a solid boss. Hired me based on a gut feeling, and has been decent to me ever since. I think I knew it would be a good fit when during the interview he tried to tell me about the 4 pillars of the company and forgot one. Told me later it was knowledge. I had a boss that used to watch me through a gap in the glass partition between our desks. She wanted to see if I was paying attention during meetings. One day, I put a large folder to cover the gap and she freaked. I still laugh when I think about it. I had a redhead boss who made us all sit down and watch a training video about how we shouldn't refer to him as a ginger because it is bullying. No one had ever called him that. I used Michael Scott as a reference point for an old boss of mine from the moment I started working there. He made Chewbacca noises on the regular, because one of my coworkers' names sort of vaguely sounded like Chewbacca. It didn't. Used voice to text extremely loudly in his office for no reason to send really personal messages, got really excited, and wore a specific vest anytime we had after-work outings scheduled. Shouted the same like 7 references to old movies, and extremely awkward hip-hop song quotes 100 times a day, and insisted on greeting all our international coworkers very loudly in their language. They all speak perfect English, of course, looking around for approval afterward, and then fully giggling at everyone's French accents on conference calls. He also told me a lot about an improv show he did for a full year after it happened. That said, he had all the good parts too. He never hesitated go to the mat for any of us whether we deserved it or not. He gave really sage business advice, and great examples of how to face challenges out of absolutely nowhere, and he came to every community play I did in the 4 years I worked for him, and told everyone else in the office how good I was in it for the following month, and chastised them for not coming. When things really got serious or bad in my life, he couldn't have been more kind, helpful, and supportive. Honestly, probably the best boss I'll ever have. Never have worked for one myself, but my dad told me a story about his boss who was giving out awards to everyone in honor of how long they've worked there, and he would give speeches for each person. A woman employee received her award, and he gave a speech about the story of how she came to work there. And he said, "At first I didn't want to hire her because she was so hot. My dad's not working there anymore, but I love that story, because I will never not picture Michael Scott giving Pam a Dundee and saying that about her. I once worked for a family company, not my family, where my boss often had loud fights with her husband, mother, and sister, an addict with a penchant for stealing, in the halls. I have a million wonderful stories about that workplace, but one that stuck out to me is this. Once for someone's birthday, she decided it would be fun to buy an anatomically correct, male blow-up doll. She took this doll into the office, blew him up, and dressed him in a construction vest. The company was a contractor. When I walked by, my boss was trying to manipulate the position of the blow-up dick, and asked me if I wanted to be the fluffer. Had a boss who was very peculiar. For instance, he'd open a random closet, look at the stuff inside, then go on a tirade, look at all this. Who bought all this crap? You did. Oh. Well, somebody needs to throw it away. Constant stuff like this. My brother had 2 bosses at his first job that I think fit this. It was an old married couple that owned the gym across the street from us. Probably in their 70s when he started working there. The wife was from Germany and super strict. The husband was clearly losing it. Some notable mentions are: when the husband combined bleach and ammonia to clean the hot tub and sauna room, tear-gassing my brother in the process. Wife insisted the street be swept once a week. This was my brother's task. Almost every single time, the husband would come out halfway through with a leaf blower and destroy any progress my brother had made. Husband would regularly sit in the sauna for way too long and have to be rescued by brother and coworkers. Brother opened every Saturday. They never gave him a key, so he would have to hop the fence to get in. There's so many more, but I know he's asleep right now, and I can't ask him. My boss insisted his daughters be flower girls in my wedding. I declined. At the reception, he told me I was spending too much time talking to one person, and I need to work the room more. I literally had a boss who would stop us in the middle of our work and hold company-wide meetings talking about 9/11 truth or conspiracies and chemtrails. Mind you, we were furniture-making company. He would get so caught up in his conspiracy theories that he forgot to order wood to make furniture 1 month. He held a meeting with our whole team less one person to discuss said person being gay. We all knew for well over a year and never made a deal of it. So yes, they are out there, and that is why the show is so funny to me. I can relate. Yep, I had one. Organized a thoroughly awkward award ceremony once that we never did again. Asked a Mexican employee if his new baby's name was going to be Nomos during the shower we threw for him. Heard me once use the phrase economy of scale, then used it wrong 5 minutes later in a conversation with different people. Didn't know the meaning behind Black Friday and what it meant for a company to be in the black. Just like Michael Scott, only more of a dick. I worked for a woman as her personal assistant / cat sitter. She was super rich and off the deep end nuts. She had me order a mannequin online, and then paid me to take one of the mannequin legs to Nordstrom to try and see what suitcase I could buy that would fit the dismembered mannequin body, because she wanted to fly with the mannequin to Pittsburgh to display as her daughter, dressed in her daughter's clothes, at that daughter's graduation celebration. Buying the mannequin was a whole thing too. She kept trying to get me to order from adult doll websites, because she didn't get it. LMAO. I had one, and these are just a few quick stories. He asked me how much I weighed during my interview. One time he was considering selling the company to a Japanese company, and while walking them around the building he was heard saying, "We really bombed the hell out of you, huh?" He got on the intercom and interrupted everyone by yelling for someone to bring him the football team's schedule. I have video of him telling a really cringy joke during a sales meeting. You could see at least one person covering their face in embarrassment. One time he told me to call his assistant and have her bring him a bag of coffee and his 5-pound dumbbell. He had a secret facelift. He was mysteriously gone for 3 weeks and came back with a beard. I ended up with a box of pictures from the 70s with an exotic dancer giving him a lap dance. In the conference room. Same furniture. One time I watched his business partner go down the potluck line, tasting everything with the same fork. At the end of the line, he stuck his used fork into the cake. I haven't eaten at a work buffet since. Honestly, these are just the ones I immediately remember. It was 5 years of this. Edit, this seemed relevant. One time he got new patio furniture and sent the guys from the shipping department to put it together at his house. Orders did not go out that day. Edit 2, he had a huge closet where he'd hoard random shit. He was a total pack rat, and his wife didn't let him keep junk at home. I was looking for something one day and found a box labeled watches with dead batteries. He saved an entire box of watches that he knew didn't currently work, and also knew how to fix that. But instead, he just kept them in a box. I had one for a year and it was awesome. If he would be in the middle of a story, and the phone rang, he would literally say let it go to voicemail. If a customer called 5 minutes before closing, he'd demand I let it ring and go to VM. He was late more often than I was. He frequently bought us coffees. He always took our side in customer disputes, and if a customer yelled at us or got abusive on the phone, he would call them back and get into an argument with them and tell them to order from someone else. He straight out told us that if weather conditions were bad, he didn't care how late we were, just that we were safe. Sometimes he would tell me on random days to take a 2-hour lunch. I was salary and didn't punch in or out. He was great. And he gave me so much free stuff. We used to call him Michael Scott behind his back. Unfortunately, the owners were a bit stricter. Myself and another coworker got fired and said boss got demoted. It was fun while it lasted. Edited to clarify, my boss did take our department and customers very seriously and was on top of the numbers. He just knew that happy, well taken care of employees are likely to produce more. We worked in a very stressful environment, so when we were able to take it easy a bit, he let us and often recommended it so we'd keep sane. Upper management were just slave drivers and hated that we laughed so much because they thought if you're having a good time at work, you obviously aren't being productive. I was very productive because my boss took care of me and made it fun to come to work. Long ago, my 80-year-old boss pulled me into his office. B, Paul, I've noticed that your shirts come untucked and that looks unprofessional. Me, I'm sorry about that, Joel. B, I want you to start tucking your shirts into your underwear. Me, B, go ahead and try it now. Me, Joel, you know I have 15 women who report to me I can't undo my pants in the office. B, sure you can. Drops pants. He is 80 and wearing SpiderMan underoos. This is also the story of how I went to work at Asterisk Oak instead. Had a manager at my previous job that really tried his best to be everyone's BFF. He loved giving pep talks and thought he could raise our abysmal morale by being MR. Positivity, note, morale was low because we were always buried in work and paid shit. He'd crack jokes, randomly burst into song and sneak up behind you to yell you're doing a great job. Unfortunately, he was also super incompetent at his job. He relied heavily on a junior colleague for help with technical stuff. They practically did his whole job for him, and spent days working on paperwork that should really only take an hour or two. If you had a problem, his answer was usually either to stare blankly at you until you left, or to say think positive, and it'll work itself out. Thing he did I hated the most: whenever people would apply to work at the company, he'd print out the stack of resumes, sit at his desk, and read aloud all of the parts he found funny. He'd laugh at people for working at McDonald's or other fast food places. He loved finding grammar mistakes and making fun of them. If someone had a cringe-worthy objective statement, he'd guffaw over that too. This was all done loudly, and it was an open office, so you couldn't avoid hearing it. That definitely lowered morale too. My boss used to carry around a backpack full of hammers, and if you fell asleep at your desk he started banging a hammer on your desk until you woke up, and then he would autograph the hammer and give it to you as a gift.